it was back in 2019 when we first came up with the idea, and our lives have changed so much in that time frame.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a daughter. I lived in Philly previously, so I moved back to DC. I had a job, left the job, bought a house, moved to a different state after DC. So there have been a lot of changes, and you have many to speak of as well.
Yeah, so when we first came up with this idea, we were living in DC, and I moved to New York. A whole pandemic happened.
Yeah.
I got a husband.
A whole husband.
That wasn't the plan, but just kidding. And then, yeah, I moved. I got a husband. I got a new job. I left my job, and then I got a new job. So a lot has happened, but the question that I must ask, let's just kick it off. Why'd you quit?
Why did you quit?
Because of you.
And there is some truth to that. But I guess we'll take it back, right, to the careers that we had before that we absolutely loved. And it was a whirlwind.
Yes.
So you worked at ABC News.
This time last year, my contract was up. And this was going to be my third 3-year contract with ABC News. I was an anchor for the network, and I was a correspondent for programs like Good Morning America, World News Tonight, Nightline, pretty much every ABC News program. But most of you guys probably know me from the early morning news show, World News Now. I anchored that for 2.5 years. And I was ready to re-sign. I mean, there was a delay in my contract, and I was just waiting for it. But then, look at the universe. Look at God. Something happened, and I was like, wait a second. And for the first time in my career, I questioned, was this for me? Which my first thought was like, are you crazy? Like, this is your dream job. How is it that you're even questioning if this is for you? I decided at 16 years old that I was going to be a journalist. And part of it was because I used to watch the news with my parents. My parents are African parents. They love them some news, right? They'll be there watching every evening like they're about to go make some foreign policy decisions after.
They got to go make a live report.
What is going on with Russia? Okay, Mr. Putin. No, they would watch every night. And it was something that I started bonding with my dad about, right? So he loved him some world news, and I would watch it with him. In college, my dad passed away. And that was the first time in my life that I experienced loss. But it was also someone who was a pillar in my life. So when I say it shook me to my core, because I had no idea what grieving was like, what was going to happen from then on. And so I remember thinking, the only thing I can do is to continue what he started. I mean, my parents came to this country to give me a better life, right? They put so much into setting my sister and I up to succeed. And so I was like, I have to make sure that that's not in vain. So I'm going to grab this baton and keep going. What I loved about being a journalist was the fact that you get to meet so many people from different walks of life. You get to tell their stories. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. And then I said I was going to do it before the age of 30. Why 30? I have no idea.
Isn't it funny how we just throw out arbitrary numbers?
Listen.
But you did it by, and yes, you did it by.
No, I threw out 30 because I was like, let's just spice it up a little bit. Let's up the ante.
A little fire, yeah.
Add a little fire. I did it by 27.
Mm-hmm. And it is?
And it is being a network news correspondent. Yeah. I remember my first time reporting for World News, right? Mm-hmm. This is the program that my dad loved. And when you sign off, you say, Mona Kosar-Abdi, ABC News, New York. And I remember when I signed off, I just started crying.
Wow.
I just started crying because it was almost like a relief, like I did it. I said I was going to do something. I could only imagine how proud he would have been. But it was also bittersweet because the one person that I wanted to see me do that was not here to see it.
Yeah.
And when I tell you, some of the career highlights is like, I got to anchor Good Morning America.
I remember that.
Like,
yeah.
And I will never forget when they're counting you down.
Ooh, that countdown is...
Jeanette's like, I'm shaking him up.
Did you get nervous? Were you nervous?
I wasn't. And I don't know why. Because something, especially that you dream of and that you want, you would think like, oh my God.
This is the moment, yeah.
I felt so comfortable.
Wow.
And I remember they count you down. And then you say, Good Morning, America. I'm like, y'all don't understand. Like, my people came 3 to 5 business days ago. Like, we just came to this country, and to say that, and to be able to wake up people from all over the country, like, none of that was taken lightly. Mm-hmm. But as you know, like with every job, especially when you get to the top, like it's competitive, right? And it's demanding. And so there were moments where, for example, like I mentioned, I worked on that overnight show for 2.5 years. I was
coming
going
in at
11 p.m.
Yeah.
Coming out at 4 a.m. for 2.5 years, sometimes staying till 6 a.m., sometimes doing Good Morning America and staying till 8 a.m. And it was hard. I'm not going to lie. And also, like, when I became a correspondent, I would have a go bag by the door because at any moment, they're going to tell you to go to this state, that state. Some breaking news is happening somewhere in the country. Right. You grab your bag, you go for who knows how long. And so with that, I mean, also, as I mentioned, like at the top, it gets competitive. And there were some opportunities that I felt I deserved, that I got passed up for. And then there were some outside opportunities that were amazing that I was getting presented and that were more in line with what I wanted to do. I'm allowed to have new dreams. I'm allowed to grow. I'm allowed to have new interests. I'm allowed to pivot. Hell, I'm allowed to start over if I want to, right? And so I remember bringing that to you. This is where you come in. Not leaving you out. I remember coming to you and being like, this is what I'm struggling with. This is what I'm on the fence about. And you said, because I was like, maybe I just signed one more contract. Mm-hmm. Maybe I just do it. Like, it was almost like, it felt safe. Out of fear, I was like, maybe I just sign one more contract and like, we'll visit this later. And you were like, is there anything that is going to change about your circumstance, about how you feel, that you won't be in the same spot you are today 3 years later, just 3 years delayed?
Right.
But also maybe not having the same opportunities that are being presented to you now.
Yeah. I said, is what you will have gained from these next 3 years in a new contract greater than what you will have turned down? Mm. And you were already turning down.
And y'all, that shook me to my core. I was like,
I wasn't sure.
I was just silent. I was like, damn. All right. But what I wasn't expecting is that I would look up. I can't have an original moment, girl. I looked up.
You can't have nothing.
No. And you're like, oh, I didn't tell you. I quit you. Like, oh. Yeah. So what happened?
So,
because you were secure, job security. You were solid.
One thing that I hadn't shared was I was given the opportunity for a national show. And this is it. Life is so interesting because this, many would argue, this is it. It's kind of like dangling that shiny thing in front of you that the little, Jeannette or Mona would have always wanted. Yeah. And it's a test of, what do you know your purpose? And for me, my main things were spending more time with my family. It was flexibility, and it was the opportunity to just do me. You know what I mean? I think people don't realize when you work for, a corporation like we do, there are a lot of limitations on what you can and can't do. Understandably so, a lot of it is ethics and maintaining objectivity. All that to say, I knew immediately, I can't do this. I can't do this show. You know what I mean? It would totally not, the money is great, but it doesn't align. My mom said it the best way. She said, you're literally doubling down on what you don't want.
Yeah. Like, this sounds like a plan.
Right? And that's, I think sometimes life will test you.
Yeah.
And it's great because it lets you know, it reaffirms, no, you know what you're doing. And despite the greatest test, you're willing to stick to what makes you happy. A news director told me one time when I was negotiating, he was just like, up until then, I kept on, this is like TMI, but let's just say I got a lot of anxiety every time I had to walk in and negotiate. And so, because we went back and forth, we had like 25 meetings. It was crazy. And one time he was just like, you realize I could have the creme de la creme here. I could have people lined up out the door. And I was like, yeah, but you're talking to me. Oh. But it was mostly because I was just ticked off as opposed to like, this confidence. But that's when I started to it was like a slow build of confidence. And it was right when I got to DC that I really started to own it. But faking it can be exhausting because you always feel like you don't want to be found out. You know what I mean? And any slip up, there's this voice in your head that's like, they're going to find out. I would have full-blown panic attacks. There was a time in Philly I was anchoring, and I had a full-out panic attack. Like my voice went really thin. It was trembling. I was trembling. My heart was racing. And after the show, the producer was like, hey, were you okay there? I didn't know if you were going to get through the story. And I was like, girl, I was fine. I don't know what you're saying. And I had an Apple Watch, and you could see like the blood pressure.
It's in orange.
So all of that to say, I mean, I had some moments, and finally I got it, but I could have saved myself. Had I had your attitude, I could have saved myself. All of that.
No, I think part of it is you realize like the Lulu is the Solulu. Like you really create your own reality. And the thing is, you give people power when you feel like, oh, they're going to figure me out. Well, who are they to figure you out, right? Like, what do you know that I don't know? And I think, I will say the part that saves me is the fact that I'm like, I can learn what I don't know. And it might be a Somali thing, I'm not going to lie, where they're just like, there's an ongoing joke where they would ask like, it's like a story that goes around, but it's like, you would ask somebody who's Somali, like, oh, do you know how to build a house? And they'd be like, yes. They don't know how to do it, but they'll figure it out. Right? And that's the thing, is like, you can figure it out. Yeah. I will say, even just changing how you label things. You asked me something recently where you're like, do you get nervous? And I was like, no. And then I thought about it, and I've been thinking about it for a really long time after you asked me that, because I'm like, I don't get nervous, but like, what is that?
Wild.
But I realized it's because I reframed what nervous is. So I will say, no, but I'm like, the adrenaline is rushing. Like, I am pumped. Let's do this. And I'm like, I'm excited. That's what I call it. So I realized all of the things that happen when you're nervous, your heart rate beating, your palms are sweating, you're fully focused, you block out everything else. All of those things, to me, it just means I'm excited.
Not that you're invested in this, that you care about it. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Like, labels matter.
Labels matter.
And what you tell yourself matters. I will say really quickly, because I know to the point about the space you're in when you've made the decision or about to make the decision, intuition, a lot of people ask.
You're really good at that.
What does that feel like? How do you know that it's your gut or your intuition? I do want to get your thoughts on it too, because I don't know that we've talked about you and your intuition, but I'll say with the decision that I made about leaving, I remember it felt very like a lot of, how do I say it? Not a lot of noise in terms of like a lot of different voices and opinions and all of that, but it just felt very busy mentally as I was trying to make this decision and getting counsel and going back and forth in my head. And finally, when I did that litmus test and I got the answer I wanted, it just went totally quiet, just mentally. Like, there was just very serene, and there was this calm. And I was firm in my decision and never wavered. And I didn't need any more advice. I didn't need any more feedback. I was good with it. And I was almost excited about the time for that time to come. The only thing I was dreading was making the announcement, right? But I'll say, with intuition and your gut, think back on the times when you made a decision or were about to make a decision, and try to remember how you felt and what shifted. And that'll give you an idea of how your intuition manifests itself. Even like just physiologically, how it manifests itself. For a lot of people, it's their heart racing. For some people, it's sweating. For me, it's just complete quiet and calm. And I can be a very anxious person when I'm making a decision. And I'm just chilling after I've made it and I'm ready to go.
I love that.
What would you say it's for you?
I think I'm out of touch with my intuition a little bit. I
haven't met yet.
I think I call and the phone doesn't get picked up. No, that is something that I want to work on, and I wanted to start journaling because of that. Like, I feel like when you're busy, and I'm really busy right now, I lose touch with my thoughts, my feelings, and I really, I'm not tapped in to who I am. And I feel like I'm like that right now. But you are really good about like, you know where you stand. And I'm taking notes, girl. I'm taking notes over here.
And think about, just really quickly, if you are a person who kind of can be indecisive or go back and forth, or and then suddenly it's just, and you have to have felt that, like with your decision with ABC, like suddenly.
But what I struggle with is, I think there was a lot of pressure to be perfect in my family, right? It's like, you can't mess up. We don't mess up. There's no such thing as failure. You always, you know. And that's why, you know, I'm highly ambitious, but I also feel like I put way too much pressure on myself.
Yeah.
So that means every decision, it leads to indecision, because you're like, this has to be the right decision. And so I will say, even though in that moment I did make the decision, I also felt like I was stressed about it. I was really stressed about it leading up to it, a little bit after. And then, you know, the great part and what helps is I immediately started my role as an extra correspondent and co-host, right? So that helps alleviate some of the pressure. Now, if I went cold turkey like you did, I would have been like, ooh, check me into somewhere.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
For me, it's so funny. I think for you, it's that outside pressure. For me, it's always the financial aspect.
Yeah.
Because of it's funny how like our childhood traumas, or like how they come up, because for me, it was more like, these checks better come in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And it was, I will only walk away. I was turning down already more than I was making. Some people say you left too late.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, I need to be absolutely positively sure that I can make this transition. But I have for some reason, I feel like maybe my family is the exception to it. I've been extended the grace in life where it's like, do what makes you happy. And if it doesn't work, we'll figure it out. And it was funny, because as soon as I made my decision on air, made the announcement on air, my mom sent me a really sweet text that was basically telling me how proud she was of me for making the decision to basically choose myself and bet on myself.
Yeah.
And I was like, ma'am, I am still in studio. I cannot cry.
No.
But it
was a very sweet message.
It was a very sweet message. And it was like, she said something like, you know, I feel like I'm the lucky one that God gave me the blessing to be able to witness my daughter choosing herself and choosing to take care of her family and extended family.